Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? I'm sorry about that. I was hanging out on another channel. I was hanging out with Ninchi on their channel, talking about the Phoebe Bishop changes and investigations and things like that. I'm sorry to keep you all waiting. It was a longer live show than I was well not expecting. I mean, live shows go for a long time. It's always what? Okay. Uh, they always take their time and things like that. How are you all going out there? I wanted to hop on at least this afternoon and just kind of see as many people as I could because I often don't get to see anyone anymore. Hey, Danny. Hey, Danny gifted to. Hey, sorry, you can see my ugly face for a second. Um, yeah, just let me just move this around. Sorry about that. You know that heater. So when I did this to my face, and I slipped and fell, and I cracked my head open on the TV unit. Well, I crushed my heater, and it just arrived, so I had to order a new heater because it's freezing in Melbourne, and it arrived like just as we started the live show because the heater came. Good to see you all. Sorry about the gap. It's been one of those days. It really has. Uh, yeah. I don't know how that works, but yes. Good to see you all. How have you been? Been on the phone all day and night. Who have you been talking to, my friend? You're gonna have to tell me. Good to see a lot of people from Ninchi's channel in here. Hey, good to see you all. Had a great live stream with Ninchi on their channel. Got to talk about Phoebe Bishop. You know, I know streaming with someone else is not always easy. I've had a lot of experience with it because I've done it with Web Sleuths and stuff like that. We often have like 3 people panels, and but even when you've done that for a long time, it's very easy to. It takes a while to sort of learn each other's cues and how they talk and how they form sentences and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a learning process, especially when you're just sort of meeting each other for the first time. So we'll do something else with Ninchi in the future, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more Tanika and James stuff to talk about coming up. But yeah, Sean says that was her first time, I think, and you blended in well. Yeah, it's just it takes a little while, and the rapport will get better as you do more streams together. I mean, I don't think it was bad, but I'm just saying, even on my side, it's a little nerve wracking because you have never worked together before. But it was all right. We did pretty good. We did pretty good. Gayla says it was nice to hear you chatting. Yeah, it's nice to not be alone talking to myself for once. Marilyn says I subscribed to her channel. I'm happy you did that. Thank you for doing that. So, let me see. I just want to go back, make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, so I was a guest on another channel for a while, Ninchi True Crime. No, we're going to talk about Erin. We are going to talk about Erin. Sean says I'm on 2 devices listening to ping. Yeah, sorry, it came up at the last minute, and I didn't want to, not do the crossover or the collab or whatever you call it. I wanted to do that. Um, I thought it was a good idea. So, I'll run you through what we have. Hey, Leisha, how are you, my friend? Squinting cat. My cats do squint sometimes. All right, let me get my notes. Yeah, move that. You've got it on the TV. Okay. So, did you guys all see the new message at the start of the show? Did you all see it? I hope you did. I hope you all saw the new video. I hope you all understand what that means. Actually, while I pick up the notes and get them installed because I was doing a completely different story like about 10 minutes ago, you guys can watch this again for about 20 seconds. See? Subjudice contempt. It's for people who are naughty. That's who it is. All right, let me open this up. Okay. Sorry, guys. There you go. Just have a read of that. There we go. That's fine. There you go. So you have all been forewarned. Ping has warned everyone now. No one can claim that they don't know what we're talking about. RX Girl, thanks for coming on and talking about this. RX Girl, I'm in a completely different screen right now, but I'll do what I said, what we talked about when I get a chance, okay? Might be somewhat later in this show, might be after this show, might be before, I don't know. But I'll get there. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. It's very, very kind of you. Good to see you, by the way. It's good to see all some of the people. I Hate Mornings is here. Sean Gala's here. Marilyn Landis. Who else we got? Alana. Squinting Cat. Hey, good to see you guys. Francesca's here. Marjorie. Got heaps of people tonight. Rachel's here. Hey, Rachel. Danny was here earlier. He's probably gone to sleep with his giant dog. Yeah, TGIF is definitely TGIF. It is TGIF. All right. All right. So last night we didn't get well we did. We talked about yesterday's notes, right? And then everyone decided to speculate in the chat. So just understand that you can't speculate on these cases when it is a live trial in Victoria. Subjudice can so most likely you would not get in trouble. I would get in trouble. They would come after me and say that I was telling you guys information, causing you guys to speculate. That's sort of the way the court sees it. They see it as like I'm attracting you to my channel, and it's my fault, not your fault. So, because I didn't warn you, I didn't turn the chat off, I didn't give you whatever. So, yeah, you can't speculate, you can't give me a theory, and you can't what they call apply innocence or guilt. So you can't be like, I think that guy's innocent. I think that guy's guilty because XYZ, because of the evidence or whatever. So you guys can talk to each other and say hi, and it's good to see Ping, and oh, So there you go. There's a quick rundown of it. Because that was disappointing that we had to burn that show last night. That was, it was we were already about an hour into it, and the risk just became too high, and it just had to go away. Had to go away. That's right. And in a few weeks' time, we can all talk about this freely. We can all say what we want. We can all have all the theories we'd like to have. We can do all that type of thing, but just not right now. In a couple of weeks. You're not so Alana, you're not supposed to. One of the things we were told about is like sort of like image, and one of the things that they don't want us doing is sort of commenting on image. And I'm not going to name the person they don't want us commenting on, but I'm guessing you might be able to guess who it might be. So Tamara says you must be exhausted. It's been a long 6 weeks. It's been a long 6 weeks. I got a wife in the hospital and a lot of just a lot going on. There's a lot going on. It's crazy. All right. So I'm not. I don't think I'll read all of them out. I think that would just be redundant now because a lot of the media has come out about a lot of these quotes. But I've got some that I want to talk to you about. I've got some here that I think you would want to hear about. So they're asking here about Erin Patterson's police interview, and they ask her about a question, and the question is, "Do you know anything about a dehydrator in your house?" And the answer at that time was no, and it says, "Do you own a dehydrator?" And they ask her, "Were those lies?" And Erin says, "Yes." And they ask her, "Why did you tell the police those lies on the 5th of August?" And she says, "Well," so they're talking about the dehydrator here. "Well, I had disposed of it a few days earlier in the context of thinking that maybe mushrooms that I had foraged or the meal I prepared was responsible for making people sick. Then on Saturday, Detective Eppingstall told me that Gail and Heather had passed away, and this was a stupid, knee jerk reaction to just dig deeper and keep lying. She says, I was scared and I shouldn't have done it." And they say here, in the next set of that police interview, you were asked questions, and the question was, "Is that something you've done in the past, foraging for mushrooms?" And she replies, "Yes, I remember that." And they say the answer that you gave at that time was never. They asked a second follow up question in that interview, and it was, or anything like that. And again, the reply from Erin at that time was never. Never was the answer to both those questions. And they ask her in court, that was a lie too. And she says, yes, they were both lies. So she admits to lying in this police interview. So that's the police interview I ran you through a couple of weeks ago, and I ran you through my notes from watching it. So we got to see it at trial, and it's Erin Patterson sitting in a police station on the 5th of August, 2023, and they run through a series of questions with her. That's what these questions yesterday in the trial were relating to. So they're talking about in it's not I've seen it described as an interrogation video. It's not an interrogation video. It's just a police interview. Anyone labeling it an interrogation has never sat through an interrogation because that's not what it is. It's just a record of interview. Just want to make that clear. There's a lot of people with their sensationalism in the media. Crazy people. Um, and they say here, you were also asked some questions in the record of interview about the Mount Waverley house, and you said to the detective that you had a big clean out of the pantry and fridge the last time you were there. Erin replies she did. And they said, when was the last time you were there? And she says, it was late June, early July in the school holidays. And they ask her, why were you doing a big clean out of the pantry and the fridge at the time? And she says, I was thinking of selling that property at Mount Waverley in the light of the fact that my kids were at a different school. And she said, I thought perhaps I'll trade the property in Mount Waverley for a house in another location and make it easier on us all. And they say in the record of that interview, you told police They ask her for a phone number, and she gave a specific phone number. I'm not able to tell you what that number is, I don't think. But they ask her, "That number that you gave to police, was that a lie too?" And she says, "Yes, it was." So, yeah, yeah. They say, "Well, okay, well, what's your number, Erin?" So they ask her in this interview, and she gave an answer of 04 redacted. And she said, they ask, "Is that a lie?" And oh, sorry, and they ask, "Is that a lie?" And she says, "Sorry, let me correct that. Was that a lie?" And this one, no, it's not a lie. Sorry about that. I was reading from the wrong line. So let me read that again. The quote from the police interview is, "Okay, well, what's your phone number, Erin?" And she gave an answer which was 04 redacted. Then they ask her, "Was that statement and answer a lie in that police interview?" And she says, "No." All right. So they ask her some questions about the beef Wellingtons, and they say, um, so this must be Colin Mandy. And he says, "I'm going to ask you a series of questions now, formal questions. This whole questions we've been talking about, all Colin Mandy, just to make it clear who's asking her these questions." Colin says, "I want to ask you formal questions now about the prosecution says is the case against you." And they said, "Did you lie to people when you said that you'd only cooked one batch of mushrooms for the beef Wellington?" She says, "No, I didn't lie." "Were all of the 6 beef Wellingtons the same?" She replies, "Yes." "Were each of the beef Wellingtons on each of the 5 plates that you served up the same?" She replies, "Yes." "Did you lie about purchasing dried mushrooms from an Asian grocer in the Oakley area in April of 2023? She says, "No." They said, "Did you lie about using those mushrooms from the Asian grocer in the beef Wellingtons?" She says, "No, I didn't." "Did you lie about your children eating leftovers of the same meal that you served at the lunch?" She says, "No, I didn't." "Did you pretend to be sick following that lunch?" "No, I didn't," is her reply. "At the time that you left the hospital at 10 past 8 on Monday, the 31st of July, did you believe that anyone had consumed death cap mushrooms?" And she says, "No, I didn't." And they say, "Were you reluctant to receive medical treatment at the hospital on Monday morning, the 31st of July?" She says, "On the first visit, but not on the second visit." They say, "Were you reluctant for your children to come to the hospital to receive treatment?" She says, "Initially, I was reluctant because they hadn't eaten the mushrooms and they had no symptoms. But once it was explained to me the concern, I wanted them to come in." And Colomandy says, "You admit that you factory reset phone B?" And she says, "Yes, I do." Okay. Let me scroll down a little bit in my notes. All right. They ask her some more of these questions. "Did you intend to kill or cause serious injury to Donald Patterson by serving that meal?" "No, I didn't," she replies. "Did you intend to harm him in any way at all?" "No," she replies. "Did you intend to kill or cause really serious injury to Gail Patterson by serving that meal?" She replies, "No." "Did you intend to cause any harm to her at all?" "No." "Did you intend to kill or cause really serious injury to Heather Wilkinson by serving that meal?" She says, "No, I didn't." "And did you intend to cause her any harm at all?" And she says, "No, no." "Did you intend to kill Ian Wilkinson by serving that meal?" She says, "No, I didn't." And the final question from Colin Mandy, "Did you intend to cause him any harm at all?" And she says, "No, I didn't." So they were her sort of like, um, they were sort of like her last questions under examination from Colin Mandy. So Let me take you. So after that, after we heard from Colin Mandy, who had been questioning her in the witness box for at least a couple of days. I can't remember how many days he'd done it. At least 2.5 days or something like that. We finally heard from Dr. Nanette Rogers. So Dr. Nanette Rogers is the lead prosecution. She is the one who's going to ask Erin Patterson questions for the prosecution now. And this is what we've been listening to for yesterday and part of today too. And Nanette Rogers says, I'm going to take you first to the lie that you told police about never owning a dehydrator. And Erin replies, okay. They say the record of interview that you took part in on August the 5th, 2023. And she says, yes. So they ask her here, uh, so during that interview, they ask her about an instruction manual for a Sunbeam Food Lab electronic dehydrator. And they ask her, what was that in relation to? Do you know anything about a dehydrator in your house? And in that interview, she said no. And they said, in another question, do you own a dehydrator? She said no. And she says, in I've got manuals for lots of stuff I've collected over the years. I've had all sorts of appliances and I just keep them all. And they say these were the questions that were asked of you. And she says, yes, they are. Nanette Rogers says, it was a lie when you told police on that occasion that you didn't own a dehydrator, correct? And Erin says, correct. It was a lie when you said you didn't know anything about a dehydrator in your house. And Erin replies, correct. It was a lie when you told police you might have owned a dehydrator years ago. And she says, correct. And Nanette Rogers says, you had posted messages in the Kelly Lane chat group about purchasing and using a dehydrator some month or two earlier, correct? And Erin replies, not in the Kelly Lane group, but yes, in a private chat with my friends. I had done that, correct? And then they say, is that the Facebook friends? And she says, correct. The online group chat friends, we had some evidence from two of those women. She says, yes. Basically, they ask her here that you bought a dehydrator in February, March 2023, and that you discussed the purchase of that dehydrator in 2023 in that group, and that it must have been sometime on or before 28th of April 2023. She replies yes to all those questions. And they say, because, of course, that's the date, 28th of April, that you bought the Sunbeam dehydrator. And she says, yes. Yeah, they talk about when she buys it. It's not, I don't think it adds anything to our show. It just basically says that she went to that Better Electrical and bought it. So, yeah. All right. So they said here, now we're going to talk about evidence from Detective Paul Bernes. He attended the Kunwara transfer station on the 4th of August. This is the same day that Darren Canty, so Darren Canty is one of the managers for that transfer station. You would have heard his evidence a few weeks ago. He wasn't on the stand for very long, but his evidence was, I think, week 2 or week 3 of the trial. Okay, and they say here, yep. They said, can I suggest this is your dehydrator in the bin at the transfer station? Correct. And she replies, I presume so, yes. They ask her, why do you presume so again? And Erin replies, well, Unless somebody else put in a dehydrator as well as me, then I presume this is the one I put in. And then Nanette says, it's an agreed fact in this trial that senior fingerprint specialist Sonia Jeremiah is of the opinion that the latent fingerprint impressions were lifted from the rear of the dehydrator and compared to your fingerprints taken by police. Erin says yes. And she concluded that the fingerprints lifted from the dehydrator matched your left index, middle, and ring fingers. And Erin says that is correct. And they say, and you agree that your fingerprints were found on the dehydrator? Erin says, yes, that is correct. Nanette says, you took the dehydrator to the transfer station because you had been using it to dehydrate mushrooms, hadn't you? And she says, yes. Erin replies, yes, that is true. Nanette Rogers says, and not just any old mushrooms, death cap mushrooms, in fact, correct? Question mark. And Erin says, I didn't know that I had done that. Nanette says, you knew that you were that they were death cap mushrooms you had been dehydrating, correct? She says, no, I didn't know that. Nanette says, you're very keen to dispose of any evidence which might connect you to the possession of death cap mushrooms. Erin replies, no, I didn't know they'd been in it. And then Nanette Rogers says, that's why you rushed out the day after your release from Monash Hospital to get rid of the evidence, correct? And she says, no. And they ask her this question. You lied to police about never owning a dehydrator because you knew you had used a dehydrator to prepare death cap mushrooms to include in the lunch. And Erin replies, no, I didn't know that. And then it says, you lied because you knew if you told police the truth, you would implicate you in the deliberate poisoning of four lunch guests, correct? And she says, no, no, it's not true. Okay. So here they're going to talk to her about a series of photos. They have these series of photos that they have. Alana, that's actually so we're not allowed to comment on anything that the jury might do, say, look, anything. Not allowed to say anything about the jury. Not allowed to talk about it. Not allowed to anything. Not allowed to tell you if someone has a mohawk and it's purple. Like, can't tell you that. Can't tell you anything, unfortunately. Yeah, we're not allowed to know. So sorry. It's it's not like I yeah, sorry. The rules are very, very strict, unfortunately. I answer questions where I can, but yeah. Yes, that's right. Just another human says we just have to be patient. I know, and I know it's really hard for everyone. I understand that. I shouldn't have got so mad last night, and I'm sorry about that. It was a long day, really long day. Um, and I was just like, please don't ruin my show that I just already did an hour of. And unfortunately, we ended up having to burn it. So there's 14 jurors right now. 14. So normally they take 15. One juror was excused at one point. I think that's all I'm allowed to say about that. But there was a juror that left. So we have 14 people right now. They'll only take, I think, 12. So it was like 12 and three alternates or something like that. But now we have 12 and two alternates. So at the end, I think it gets balloted off and the two extras, whoever that might be, they won't go into deliberations. So, all right, let's continue. So they're asking her about posting these messages, and it says here, actually, they're talking about lies she told police, right? And they say here, in the record of interview that you participated on August 5th, in one of the questions, they asked you, do you preserve foods or anything like that? And she says, no. Have you ever dehydrated food or anything? And her reply in that interview was no. And they ask her, that was a lie you told police about never dehydrating food, correct? And Erin replies, that is correct. And Nanette Rogers says, because of course, you had posted messages in your chat group earlier in the year. And she says, I did. And they said, you told your friends that you had been dehydrating mushrooms. And she says, that's correct. That you had posted photos of a food dehydrator on your bench, which had mushrooms on trays, and you talked about adding them into meals. And again, Erin says that is correct. And they say here that one of the Facebook friends, um, they ask her about it. This is a photo you sent to that friend, and Erin says it is. And it is a photo of your dehydrator. And she says, yes, with mushrooms on the dehydrator's trays. And Erin says, yes. And they say here that they show her another photo that has mushrooms on it. And they ask her, this is again something that you posted to your Facebook friends. And Erin replies, I did do that. And they say here that the evidence from the two Facebook friends is to the effect that you discussed a food dehydrator in this group chat sometime in 2023, and you shared photos of dehydrating mushrooms in the food dehydrator and said that you were dehydrating mushrooms and you didn't mention any other foods, correct? And Erin says, I don't agree with that. I'm sure I did mention other foods. Nanette Rogers asks, what other foods might you have mentioned? And she says, I can't be specific about that, but I was not only dehydrating mushrooms, I'm sure I would have told them about the other things. Nanette Rogers says, what are those other things? And she says, so I tried to dry apples and bananas and quite a lot of different types of fruit. And Nanette Rogers says, did you take photos of them? And Erin says, I don't remember. I might have. I don't remember. And then they say here that two of the Facebook friends gave evidence that you had been dehydrating mushrooms and blitzing them into a powder to hide them inside of food. You heard that evidence. And Erin replies, I did. And they show a screenshot to the jury. And in that screenshot, it reads, I've been hiding powdered mushrooms in everything, mixed it into chocolate brownies yesterday. The kids had no idea. Nanette Rogers says, you sent this message or posted it. And Erin says, I did send that message. Yes. And they ask her, is that Facebook user that sent that message, is that you? And she says, it would have been me. Yeah. Nanette Rogers says, you first dried the mushrooms you had, then blitzed them into a powder, correct? And she says, I did. And they ask her here, how did you blitz these mushrooms into a powder? And did you use a blender? And Erin says, I think I used a Thermomix. Nanette Rogers says, I suggest that you were testing to see how you could hide mushrooms in food without someone noticing, correct? And Erin says, I was seeing if I could put mushrooms into my kids' food. And Nanette follows up with, without them noticing, correct? And Erin says, yep, that's fair. So there you go. That's fair. Um, Alana, that's mostly what it is right now, and I know it's really frustrating. The chat's sort of open to allow everyone to kind of see each other because like we've sort of not been seeing each other a lot at the moment, and most of the people here sort of get what you can talk about. It might just take a little bit for you, and that's okay. Um, my moderators will work with you and they'll sort it out. But yeah, no one's going to be like jump on you or be mad at you or whatever. It's just yeah, it's just sort of just the laws. It's not ping. I don't make them. I don't make the laws. Unfortunately, the state of Victoria make the laws. Um, like if you have something about some sort of specific evidence that I'm talking about and you're watching on a replay and you want to know like maybe I don't explain something and you're like, "Can you tell me what that means?" Yeah, that's okay. If you want to email me and be like, "Tell me when the jury's going into deliberations. I know you know Ping, tell us." And I'll be like, "No, you can't email me stuff like that." I don't know that information by the way, and I'm not joking. It's not like I'm trying to keep some secret or something. I have no idea. You guys know as much as I do. So it's not something I know. But yeah, if I'm talking about something and you have a follow-up question, I might be able to answer it for you. Um, if you want to talk about things like guilt or associations of guilt or something like that, I won't be able to help you. So even in private, I wouldn't be able to help you. It's just weird. It's a bit strange how the law is worded. One of the things in the act for this is the word broadcast. And when I talked to this with our lawyer and I asked him about it, he's like, well, he's like traditionally that means like TV or radio or a newspaper or may, maybe the internet or something. But he's like, with the online world the way it is now, he's like, even sending an email to someone might be considered broadcasting because he goes, you're still a media member. And even sending it to one person, he's like, it's semantical, but he's like, legally, they could. Chances of it happening probably pretty slim, but he's like, it does fall that way under sort of the wording. So, yeah. Hey, Shad. Good to see you, my friend. I miss you too. Hope you're going well. And you're alive? I'm glad you're alive. Thanks. I appreciate it. Just another human said, if I was a juror, I would like the privacy protection, though. That's right. So we're not allowed to, like, you have to be very careful. If you're at the courthouse and you want to take photos or something, you got to make sure you know who the jury are. Because if you get them in your photos and you're like, hey, look at me outside the courthouse, and there's like four jurors in the background of your photo, they will smack you down so quick, I promise. They will get you. They will get you for doing it. It's paramount that the jury is protected. I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. Um, the difference that with that is that person is not in this country, and the chances of prosecuting them in Spain is probably pretty limited. But I'll tell you this: they don't have all the information. I've watched a few of their shows. They are reading from like the Guardian or the ABC or whatever. They don't have a lot of the information. They have some, but not all of them. Sorry, Pung, not Pung. All right, Pung. That's all right. I think your phone really likes that word. Look, Pung. Yeah, you want me to be welcome in the courtroom? Good, because I would like to do more court cases. It's the only way I can bring you this type of information, and it's to be really, really cautious. So, Karen says we literally have to be like a jury. That's right. They can't discuss, nor can we in Australia. We do not receive live coverage, right? And that Ping being able to be like this is being like a fly, like being a fly on the wall. Exactly, and that's the type of coverage I'm trying to give to you guys. You just have to help me out a little bit and understand that you just have to sort of listen. The chat's open so you can kind of say hi to each other and wave and be like, "Hi, it's good to see you all." But it's not for like sort of breaking down evidence and discussing. Not right now. We will do that, I promise. I promise. There'll be so many things to talk about. You have no idea. No idea. There'll be many things, all of the things, 20 things, maybe 50, I don't know. Um, that's right. I used to be Pong. That's right. That's right. We can discuss all this when it's all over. And I promise that I am working on a 10-part podcast right now, breaking down all of this. I've already written 2 episodes that we'll be doing as soon as we get a verdict. Yeah, there's a you'll get more information about this trial than you'll ever want to know. You'll just be like, I'm so bored of that guy. I think I'm going to unsubscribe from his channel. I'm bored of that. I want to go to a different trial. I don't want to listen to his podcast anymore. But that's after the trial. After. Not right now. Not right now. Gayla says, I really don't miss all my chat family. You really don't miss them. That's a weird thing to say about someone. Um, Shad Hunter said, internet just went in and out after a tornado. A tornado hit your house. You can discuss them as long as you don't associate them with people in the trial. You can say whatever you want. But if you so happen to have a koala that has the name with an E, starting with an E, you're not going to be very hidden. All right. So one of the screenshots that we get constantly told about is this one screenshot, and it's something that Erin posted, and it says, "So fun fact: the dehydrator reduces mushroom mass by 90%. Do you think Woolworths would mind if I brought the dehydrator into their vegetable section and dry things before I buy them?" They asked, "Did you send that message to the Facebook user group?" And she says, "I did." Nanette Rogers says, "You knew the dehydrator reduced mushroom mass by 90% because you weighed the mushrooms before and after you dehydrated them to see how it changed their mass." And she says, "I did." "Did you research that aspect online or was that your own experiment?" And Erin says, "I think that was from my own experiment." Nanette says, "You were interested in how much mushrooms weighed before and after being dehydrated, correct?" And that's obvious from the post that she posted. And Erin says, "Yes." Um, According to this quote, an earlier witness in the trial, DB, had been told, in her evidence, she said that she'd been told that Erin had been using the dehydrator just for mushrooms. And Erin says, "I don't agree with that." Nanette says, that was I suggest that was the true position, that you were only using the dehydrator to dehydrate mushrooms. Do you disagree?" And Erin says, "I do disagree." Nanette says, "You were using this dehydrator to dehydrate mushrooms, not to dehydrate other types of food." And Erin says, "I did do it with other types of food." Yeah. Simon gave evidence that at the Monash Medical Center on Tuesday, the 1st of August, 2023, there was a conversation with your daughter in his presence, and you told your daughter that sometime in the past she'd done a taste test where you hid small amounts of dehydrated mushrooms in muffins to see which one the daughter would like, even though she did not like mushrooms. And they ask her, "Do you remember that aspect of Simon's evidence?" And Erin says, "Oh, my daughter and I were discussing it, my son too. It wasn't the first time I was informing her." She's basically saying it wasn't the first time she was informing her. So, and Nanette says, "Had you previously told her about that?" And she says, "Well, when I did the taste test at the end, when she picked the muffin, I said, well, Surprise! There was mushrooms in it. Nanette says, so you agree that you did conduct the taste test with your daughter with the muffins on at least one previous occasion? And she says, yeah, I did. They ask her how many times, and she says, I couldn't say. They say, well, was it more than once? And Erin says, I put dried mushrooms in quite a lot of food that they ate. They ask her, what type of other foods might this be? She says, spaghetti, lasagna, stew, brownies, that sort of thing. I was trying to get extra vegetables into my kids' bodies. And they say here, I suggest that your reason for doing this is to see if you could successfully hide mushrooms in the food that you served. Erin says, well, in regards to my children's food, yes. So there you go. There you go. I can't say I've seen anything like that. See, that's the type of question I can answer for you. You said, was there any, like, has there been any evidence about other dehydrated food? I can tell you, I have not heard anything like that. The only stuff I have heard about other dehydrated food is in the evidence you are hearing tonight. That was a good question. That was a good question, Alana. Good work. Hold on, I need a drink, guys. It's so much reading. Hold on. Yeah, apparently I can. It's okay. That one, I think that one was okay. She was just asking if there was other evidence about this other dehydrated food, and that's okay because we're talking. It's from the evidence, and I'm going to say the only time I've heard that in this is that's what we're hearing right now. Doesn't mean there might be not more later. I don't know, but I'll just say that that's what I've heard is from this particular passage that we're reading from. So there you go. I hope that answers your question. She says that she is. In her evidence, she said that she was. She said that she is obsessed with mushrooms and she eats heaps of them. And that was a few. That was a little while ago, though. That. I think that might be on day 25, day 26. There was they when she first was in the witness box, they asked her about her love of mushrooms. So if you go back to that video, you'll see what that entails. Sorry, guys. You. I think you're getting it. It's fine. I think you're getting. It's all good. We're not. We don't. I only yell at people when I'm really tired, and I'm not that tired today. So I don't expect to be yelling at anyone. Not today, anyway. Unless people play up, and then I'll yell at people. Although I don't like yelling at people, I'd rather just do the show. So there we go. Um, but yeah, that was a few days ago, Moonlight View. They did say something like that. I think it's in day 25 or 6. You'll have to look it up. But it'll have the whole passage about it. All right. And they say here, yeah, did you do that more than once? Yep. Yep. We did that. Wait, did we do that? Did the taste test? What other kind of foods did you put it in regards to? Okay. All right. Let's move down a little bit more. Let's move down a little bit more. Otherwise, we're never going to finish this thing. All right. So Nanette Rogers says, I suggest to you that you saw Christine McKenzie's post about that she posted on iNaturalist on the 18th of December 2023 about death cap mushrooms at Lock. Do you agree or disagree? And she says, I disagree. Nanette Rogers says, I suggest to you that you went to Lock on the 28th of April 2023. Do you disagree or agree with that? And she says, I don't know if I did go to Lock on that day or not. They suggest, they suggest. Nanette Rogers says, I'm going to suggest that you went to Lock on that day to find death cap mushrooms. Agree or disagree? And she says, disagree. Nanette Rogers says, and that these mushrooms in the image that was shown to the jury are death cap mushrooms that you found at Lock on the 28th of April 2023. Agree or disagree? And Erin says, disagree. Nanette Rogers says, I suggest that you were weighing these mushrooms, these death cap mushrooms, so you could calculate the weight required for the administration of a fatal dose for one person. Agree or disagree? She says, disagree. Nanette follows that up and says, and the weight required for 5 fatal doses for 5 people. Agree or disagree? And Erin disagrees. All right. All right. Nanette says, I suggest to you that you have been dehydrating death cap mushrooms on or after the data purchase of the dehydrator for the purpose of putting it into the beef Wellingtons that you served up to your 4 guests at the lunch. And Erin says, that's not correct, sorry. Erin, Nanette Rogers follows that up and says, you intended to serve one of those beef Wellingtons to Simon had he turned up at the lunch. And she says, if he'd come, I would have given him a beef Wellington too. Yes, but not one with death cap mushrooms in it intentionally, if that was your question. And they ask her here about the Facebook group, okay? And they say here that she told her friends in this chat on Facebook things about the personal life, and she says, "Yeah, I did do that. Yeah, we did." About the children, and she says, "Yes." How you felt about Simon Patterson, and she says, "Yes." You told them you were an atheist, and Erin says, "No." Nanette follows that up and says, "You felt unhappy about Simon and his family wanting the children to go to a religious school," and she says, "No." You told your Facebook friends about things you cooked, and Erin says, yes, including mushrooms, and Erin replies, yes. And that your daughter didn't like mushrooms, and Erin replies, correct. That you bought a dehydrator, and she says that is correct too. Nanette Rogers asks her, um, Nanette Rogers asked her, do you agree that you never told any of these Facebook friends that you had foraged for mushrooms? And she says, I don't know if I did or didn't. Nanette says, I'm suggesting that you didn't. You're saying that you might have or you might not have. And Erin says, yeah, that is what I'm saying. Yes. And they say here, did you discuss with your Facebook friends cooking any wild mushrooms? And Erin says, I don't know. Nanette says, might you have because you discussed food with them? Erin says, I might have. I don't know. It was a group chat for 4 years. I can't remember everything we talked about. And they say here, one of your Facebook friends gave evidence before this jury was that you never discussed foraging for mushrooms with the Facebook friends. Do you accept that evidence? And Erin says, I agree. She said that. Nanette Rogers says, was it true or not true? Erin says, I don't know. She might be right. I'm not sure. All right, let me scroll down a bit, guys. Yeah. Um, so they say here, uh, it is your honour's evidence that you were asked by Professor Stewart about whether you had been mushrooming and did you use any mushrooms, and you said no. Didn't you say just before lunch that you couldn't remember the conversation? Is that correct? And she says yes. And Nanette says, is it your evidence before this jury that you don't know what it meant by the term mushrooming? And Erin says, that's not my evidence. They say, what do you understand mushrooming to mean? And Erin says, I think it means a couple of things. And Nanette Rogers says, well, what are they? She says, so I think people might use it in regards to foraging, but they might also use it in regard to other uses of mushrooms that are not eating. And Nanette says, what do you mean by foraging when you use that term? And she says, to pick and eat. Nanette Rogers says, I suggest that you deliberately use foraged mushrooms in the beef Wellington that you'd served to your guests on Saturday, the 29th of July, 2023. And Erin says, that's not true. I also suggest to you that those foraged mushrooms were death cap mushrooms. Erin says, I didn't deliberately put death cap mushrooms in the meal. Nanette says, that you knew they were death cap mushrooms. And Erin says, no, I didn't know that. Nanette says, you now claim that you panicked when you found out how ill the guest had become, correct? And she says, I don't remember saying. And they say here, your evidence to this jury is that you panicked when you found out how ill the guest had become. And she says, I don't remember saying that. Nanette Rogers says, you couldn't tell anyone the truth that you had indeed foraged for mushrooms. Do you remember saying that to the jury? And they say, yeah, she says, I don't remember saying that. Yeah. So they want to talk about her feelings towards Don and Gail. And see, these are some of the questions, right? They say they're going to take us to a message. They showed us one of these messages that had been put into evidence. And it says, Simon's dad contacted me this morning, and they asked her to read it out. And it says, Simon's dad contacted me this morning to say that he and Gail had tried to talk to Simon about the matters I raised and to get his side, but he refused to talk about it other than to signal he disagreed with. And she said, beyond that, he won't talk about it. So Don said they can't adjudicate if they don't know both sides, and Simon won't give his side. And they say, so he said, all he can ask is that Simon and I together pray for the children. And then Nanette says, I suggest that when you used eye rolling emojis in that message, it was when it was suggested that you pray. And the and that the eye roll emojis was in regards to that being the only solution. So sorry. Uh, Nanette Rogers says, I suggest that you use the eye rolling emojis when it was suggested that you pray, correct? And then it says the eye roll emojis was in regards to that being the only solution. That was Erin's reply. So there you go. What? Hey, RX girl. Can't believe it's almost been a year. I know. Hey, Sean. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. I didn't catch it before because I was reading, but I appreciate it. Hold on. I agree with you guys. I can't say I'd ever heard the name Nanette before the trial either, but I now know about that name. I do. JDR. Hey, JDR. Good to see you. You might be right, JDR. You might be right. Yeah, so what they're talking about there is that message to Simon, right? So maybe I should explain it a little more. That message is they're talking about these problems that Erin and Simon had, and that's where what it's referencing back to. And it's during this time where Erin and Simon have this complicated sort of disagreement over child support and paying for things and all these other issues. And Erin had been contacting Gail and Don to try and reach out for their sort of help or into like she wanted them to step in and try and adjudicate is the word that's in the evidence. And the other message is her typing to Facebook and telling these friends about it. And one of the things she used in it was the eye roll emoji when it was suggested that her and Simon pray about it. So that's what Nanette Rogers was asking her about. So I hope that explains it a bit better. It comes across a bit clunky in my notes. So Zen says, "Hi everyone. I don't know how much I missed. Um, I don't know. We only got on about an hour ago, so maybe about an hour. I know, guys. I know. I just wanted to catch up on these ones for you. Here, yeah. All right. So they ask her about these emojis, right? What does that emoji stand for you? And she says, I'm not sure. I don't know. They said, do you agree that there are a range of emojis that one can use on a phone? And Erin says, yes. To send to people, yes. It's a deliberate decision by the user to select an emoji. Do you agree? And Erin replies, it can be, yes. Um, Nanette Rogers says it can be. Well, it doesn't happen inadvertently, does it, Miss Patterson? Well, the nuance probably doesn't matter. This is so Nanette Rogers says it can be. Well, it doesn't happen inadvertently, does it, Miss Patterson? And Miss Patterson replies, well, the nuance probably doesn't matter. So it's probably a deliberate decision to use an emoji, I suppose. Yes. Nanette says, now what would you call these two emojis that you've used after and pray together? And Erin says, all I can say about that, it's a face with a straight line for a mouth. I don't know what I would call it. And Nanette says, but even though you used it, and she says, yeah. And they say, then you use the same emoji further down in that message. And she says, I did. And they say, in this part, Don messaged to say he and Gail don't want to get involved in our financial things, but just hope we will pray for the kids. And they say, there is another emoji there. And Erin says, there is. Nanette says, I suggest to you that these are eye roll emojis, but you disagree with that. Erin says, I think there's a better eye roll emoji than these that actually makes it clear that the eyes are rolling. I can't see anything about eyes rolling in there. Nanette Rogers says, by inserting these emojis, I suggest that you are mocking their advice to you, correct? And Erin says, no, that's not correct. And Nanette says, part of the mockery was the religious component of their advice. Do you agree? Erin says, no, I don't agree. I wasn't mocking. I was frustrated. Nanette says, even though these emojis are right next to the phrase, pray together and pray for the kids. And Erin says, they are. So there you go. Yeah, let me get a little further down, guys. So they ask her here, I suggest you access these images of information about cancer in May of 2023. And Erin says, I don't think I did. And they say, it is your evidence that you did not access images of information about cancer in 2023. Erin says, I think my answer is, I don't think I did. I don't remember. I don't think I did. It was something I was quite worried about in late of 2021 or early of 2022. And they say, but I don't think I did it in early 2023 and then they say or mid 23 and she says correct. In April and May of 2023, you had never been diagnosed with cancer, had you? And Erin says that's true. No form of cancer, correct? And she says correct. Um They say, I suggest to you that you use this information from the internet for the purpose of educating yourself on ovarian and brain cancer symptoms. And they say here, Erin says, I think I did do it, that one at that point, yes. They ask her when, and she says, in 2021 going into early 2022. And Nanette says, I suggest that this information from the internet would allow you to tell a more convincing lie about having cancer, correct or incorrect. Um, Erin says, I mean, theoretically, that's true, but that's not what I did. Nanette Rogers says, you did this in an attempt to present to your parents in law and Heather and Ian that you had been medically diagnosed with cancer, correct or incorrect. And they say, you sought out this information from the internet for the purpose of educating yourself about ovarian brain cancer and symptoms. And she said, I did do that at one point, yes. And they ask her why she did that. And they say, because I was concerned that I had ovarian cancer and I was concerned that I had something wrong with my brain. Nanette says, I suggest that you were educating yourself in an attempt to present to your parents in law, and Heather and Ian that you had been medically diagnosed with cancer. She says, no, that's not correct. And then Nanette says, you pretended to have a legitimate reason to speak with them when you organized and held the lunch at your house on the 29th of July, 2023. Erin says, I didn't give them any reason when I invited them. I just invited them. So there you go. There you go. Yeah. So they ask her about these appointments that she said she had. They say here, so this is it. These are those messages where Gail messages her about an appointment she had. And it says, hi, Erin. Just wondering how you got on at your appointment today. Love, Gail, and Don. And she said she agrees that that message, happened at that time. And then she replied to Gail and said, sorry, I had taken my daughter to see a movie last night. We saw The Little Mermaid. The appointment went okay. Thanks for asking. I had a needle biopsy taken of the lump, and I'm returning for an MRI next week, and we'll know more after the results of those two things. And Erin said, I did send that message. Nanette Rogers says, and it was a lie? And she says, it was. You didn't have an appointment. And Erin says, that is correct. And you didn't have a lump? And Erin says, I didn't have an appointment and I didn't have a needle biopsy of any lump. No. Nanette says, and you weren't told to return the next week for an MRI. And Erin says, that's correct. Yeah, I'm just checking my notes, guys. They say here, in one of the messages that she sends to Don and Gail, she says, thanks for your message, Don and Gail. There's a bit to digest with everything that's come out of it all. I might talk about it more with you both when I see you in person. Love, Erin. And Erin says, yes, I wrote that message. And they say, in this message, you purported to carry on the fiction of having a very serious illness, did you not? And Erin says, yeah, that's fair. Yep. And you hadn't been for any medical tests. And Erin replies, correct. No medical tests at all apart from the x ray. So she had a chest x ray for a chest injury, but it came back negative. And they say here, you had medical appointments around this time with GPs in the Currumborough area. And Erin says, yes. And they say, but both those appointments were to get prescriptions rather than anything else. And she says, I think that's right. Yes. But in these messages that have just been read out, you pretended to Gail Patterson that you were ill with a potentially fatal disease, didn't you? Erin says, I don't know if I'd say fatal, but serious, yes. Did you write these messages in the hope that Gail Patterson would pass this information on to Simon Patterson? She says, no, I would not expect her to. Did you write that you might talk more about it with them when they saw you in person at your place on the 29th of July 2023? Erin says that's not what the message says. And the message says, thanks for your message, Don and Gail. There's a bit to digest about everything that's come out of it. I might talk to you about it more when I see you both in person. Yeah, yeah. They ask her here, did you tell people at the lunch you had cancer? She says, no. Um, and they're saying here, Ian's evidence was that you were very concerned because you believed it was a very serious life-threatening illness. That was his evidence. And she replies, yes. Nanette says, did you say to your guests at the lunch that you were very concerned because you believed it was very serious and life-threatening? Erin says, I don't remember using those words. Nanette says, well, what words did you use? And Erin replies, I can't remember the precise words, but I do know what I was trying to communicate was that I was undergoing investigations around ovarian cancer and might need treatment in that regard in the future. I can't say that was the specific words I used, but that's what I remember wanting to communicate. All right. All right. I have to stop it there because I did the other show and this and that. I'm slightly out of time. I've got to go to the hospital, so I'm gonna cut it here. When I get back, I'll have to continue in a part two. I'm sorry about it, but I if I go any later, it'll be like 10:30 by the time I get back. So there'll be a second show in about 4 hours. Probably when a lot of Americans wake up in the morning. For Australians, it'll be Friday evening, so you can still tune in if you're an Aussie. So I love you all. Thank you very much. I've had a fun afternoon being on Ninchi's channel, then here, then doing catching up on some of these notes. Sean, thank you so much for the money for food, buddy. I appreciate it. Guys, if you do want to support this channel, these trials are long, costly, annoying, time consuming. They're like 12 to 15-hour days, I promise. The links are under the video somewhere in the chat. If you're not subscribed to this channel, please hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate it. And hit that thumbs up button if you want to see more content like this. I would really appreciate you doing one of those things if you've gained anything from the information I'm bringing back for trial for you. Um, yeah, I feed them every night. She's been gone for like a week. I feed them every night. It's okay. I will say hi to her. I will. I will. I will. Um, well is not a real word at the moment. It's just alive. Alive is the word that we're using right now. Well is not a. It's not the word I would use. Just alive is the word. So that's better than not being alive, and I'll take it. I'll take being alive than not being alive. So, yeah. You are welcome. You are welcome. You're welcome. I'm going to enjoy a long weekend where I don't have to talk about Erin Patterson. Oh, wait, I do. I have to do a second show later on. Okay, I have to talk about Erin Patterson for one more time. But I'm going to enjoy my 3-day break where I can talk about American true crime for 3 days. That'll be fun. Actually, tomorrow night I'm co-hosting on Web Sleuths live with Patricia Griffith. So tomorrow night, if you're tuning in at 10:30 Eastern for the Laurie Vallow trial, it'll be me and Patricia doing the live stream instead of Patricia and Stacy. So it'll be like old times. It'll be me and Trish again, which I don't think we've done in. I don't remember the last time I did one with her, just the two of us. But tomorrow night, teaming up, tag team again of the old OG Web Sleuths live crew. So tune in. See, my voice is going. Tune into that if you want to listen to it. It'll be a good show. We're going to talk Laurie Vallow tomorrow night. And then tomorrow after her, I will be just doing USA True Crime, hanging out, talking about all sorts of things. So we'll be talking about whatever cases. We'll talk about those 3 missing children, the father that's on the run. We'll talk about lots of things. Thanks, Just Another Human. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You watched a little bit this morning. Was it good? I haven't caught up on it yet. I've been busy. Thanks, Profiler. I appreciate it. Thanks. I will look into that. Oh, Alicia, your health has not been good again? I'm sorry to hear that, my friend. I thought you were doing really well at one point. I'm sorry to hear that's gone backwards for you, my sweet friend. Um, Thanks, Karen. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I just smacked my head at full force on a wood thing. I'm sure I'm fine. I'm sure no one's noticed any difference all week. I'm sure of it. All right, I gotta go. I'm never gonna get there, and it's gonna be very late. Love you all. Whenever I get back and I sit down and I can get on, I will. Today's notes are really short. It's going to take me about 10 minutes. It's not a lot of information, but we'll do it tonight. Maybe we'll talk some more true crime. Um, yeah. Oh, Kathy, that's very nice. Kathy says, please get Mrs. Pink some flowers. I will. I will. I will. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. It's very kind. I will do that. Actually, she's been asking for what did she ask for? She wanted herbal tea. She wanted herbal tea. I don't know why. But she's like the tea in hospital sucks. Can you bring me herbal tea? So we organized to get her herbal tea. I can't remember what else she wanted. Something else. And she's like, "Can you get that for me? It costs like $1." And I was like, "Yeah, I could do that for you." So she's asked for a few things so far. She still can't eat solid food. Still a week later, she hasn't had a bite of anything like anything solid. Although she had some jelly. She had some jelly the other day, which she really liked. She had some jelly, so that was good. Um, yeah, great to hear you too, my friend. I really hope you're going to be okay, my sweetheart. Hope you're going to be all right. I don't like to hear it because you were doing really well. You're going dancing and had a boyfriend and everything. I was very happy for you. Yeah, she got to have some jelly, but I don't think they got her on like chicken broth and jelly and apple juice at the moment. Um, yeah, unfortunately. So this will be a long process. At least it'll be at least a couple of months, unfortunately. All right, I love you all. I got to go see the girl, and it's a long trip out there. It is nowhere close to where I live. It's like 40 minutes away. So I better start on that journey. Love you all. Have a great night. If you're in Victoria, enjoy your long weekend. I'm going to be on Web Sleuths. I'll be here later tonight. I'll be all on the weekend. We'll talk USA stuff. We'll get a break from some Patterson trial. It'll be good. Love you all. Peace out. Good night. Thanks to Ninchi. Thanks to all the people from that channel. And I'll see you all soon. Bye.